Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Council for Quality Growth's 2019 Four-Pillar Tribute honoring Larry Gellerstedt III. And now, please welcome to the stage the Atlanta Music Project Junior Youth Choir.
One
And now, please welcome to the stage the Council for Quality Growth's President and CEO, Michael E. Paris, and the 2019 Chairman, Ann Hanlon.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How about another round of applause for the great choir of the Atlanta Music Project Junior Youth Choir. So good evening. I'm Michael Paris, and it's my pleasure to welcome each of you to the Council for Quality Growth's 2019 Four-Pillar Tribute. We are happy to be back at the Georgia World Congress Center, and we're especially happy tonight to be able to celebrate the 30th anniversary of this great tribute.
Good evening. I'm Ann Hanlon, the 2019 Chairman of the Council, and it is with honor that I am here tonight to present the 2019 Four-Pillar Award. This award has previously been given to 29 deserving leaders for their considerable contributions to economic growth and well-being of the Atlanta region and the state. You can see the full list of honorees on the screens. And with us this evening are former honorees, Governor Nathan Deal, Mayor Shirley Franklin, Mr. Wayne Hill, Mr. Wayne Mason, Mrs. Jenny Pruitt, Mr. Steve Seelig, Mr. Richard Tucker, Mr. Ray Weeks, Mr. John Wieland, and our 2018 recipient, Mr. Paul Bowers. And tonight, we will celebrate Mr. Larry Gellerstedt III. Each honoree was selected due to their embodiment of the four pillars of leadership: quality, responsibility, vision, and integrity. And we are pleased to have with us tonight, speaking on each of those pillars, Mr. Russ Hardin, President of the Robert W. Woodruff Foundation, Mr. Doug Hertz, Chairman and CEO of United Distributors, Mrs. Donna Highland, President and CEO of Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, and Mr. Egbert Perry, Chairman and CEO of the Integral Group. Also, our Master of Ceremonies tonight is Mrs. Hala Modelmog, President and CEO of the Metro Atlanta Chamber, and we could not be more pleased to have her with us. Most importantly, we welcome Larry Gellerstedt III, his family, friends, and colleagues, and to all of our sponsors and guests. Thank you to all of us thank you for joining us in celebrating Larry. Tonight, we also are proud to have many elected officials in the room. First, I would like to recognize Governor Brian Kemp, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, and Governor Nathan Deal, and First Lady Mrs. Deal. And now, I would like to recognize all of our elected and appointed officials. Would all of our elected and appointed officials please stand? Thank you all for joining us. We are very honored tonight to have our welcome remarks being given by such an important leader here in Atlanta. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 60th mayor of the great city of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms.
Good evening to you all. It's a pleasure to be here this evening to pay tribute to my friend, Larry Gellerstedt, as he receives his very prestigious recognition for a lifetime of community service and business excellence. Congratulations to you, Larry. In late 2017, when I was elected the 60th mayor of Atlanta, I just finished a very long and exhausting campaign and a very close runoff contest, 832 votes to be exact. As you can imagine, transitioning into the role of mayor left me with a tremendous amount of pressure because there was very little time to actually assemble a team after our election. But it was important that we hit the ground running with our vision to create one Atlanta. And fortunately, for me personally, and for the city of Atlanta, there was one person who said they would help, and that was Larry Gellerstedt. Larry had only met me once on an elevator ride in the 191 building, but he joined Vicki Palmer in leading our transition team, and he took on the job of helping to lead and recruit many of the members of my cabinet. When he was not in my office sharing his advice and counsel, he was always on speed dial, available for my calls. During my first year in office, Larry also remained chair of ACP. And as we faced unexpected challenges in the first few months of our administration, including a cyber attack that took down our city network, it was Larry who worked right alongside us to make sure that we had the professionals and also just to be there to call on, to lament as to why was this happening to me. But one of the most rewarding projects during my short time as mayor has been the launch of the Center for Workforce Innovation. This is a program at the Atlanta Technical College that works to train students for jobs at Atlanta's top companies. As we continue to work towards building an affordable workforce and affordable housing, as we reduce disparities in health and income, and as we increase opportunities for young people to go to college and find jobs, it's encouraging to know that Larry Gellerstedt is here to help and continue to lead the way. Thank you, Larry. I love you and I appreciate you.
Thank you, Mayor Bottoms, for such a warm welcome. I appreciate you being with us tonight, and this night is going to be a great night. So we would not be here without the generous support of many, many terrific sponsors. So I would first like to recognize our title sponsor, Cousins Properties. Our presenting sponsors, that's good. Our presenting sponsors are Delta, Georgia Power, and JLL. Our signature sponsors are Ameris Bank and Brown & Brown Insurance. Yeah, there you go. Children's Healthcare of Atlanta and Holder Construction Company. Let's give them a round of applause. And our diamond sponsors tonight are the Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation, the Atlanta Business Chronicle, Atlanta Gaslight, the Atlanta Regional Commission, the Coca-Cola Company, Deloitte, the Georgia World Congress Center, King & Spalding, Piedmont Healthcare, SunTrust, Turner Enterprises, United Distributors, and WestRock. And our platinum sponsors are shown on the screen. Please take a look. Let's thank everyone who made this evening possible. And now it's my great pleasure to recognize and thank the tribute chairs, those who agreed to co-chair this event for Larry this year. These co-chairs include Mr. Paul Bowers, Mr. Colin Conley, Ms. Shan Cooper, Mr. Mike Egan, Mrs. Lillian Giornelli, Mr. Taylor Glover, Mr. Russ Harden, Mrs. Virginia Hepner, Mr. Doug Hertz, Ms. Donna Hyland, Ms. Hala Modelmog, Mr. Egbert Perry, Mr. Michael Russell, Mr. Steve Voorhees, and Mr. Jenner Wood. And without them, we could not have had such a successful evening. Let's give them a round of applause. So this being the 30th anniversary, the Council for Quality Growth has had the honor of giving out this great tribute. I want you to know that the Council truly values our relationship with the state of Georgia, the city of Atlanta, as well as all of our local governments across the region. Through our platforms of advocacy, education, and collaborative problem solving, we are able to connect the development community and the policymakers throughout the region and state. The Council is a unique organization, unparalleled by any other in Metro Atlanta and the state, and we are in our 4th decade of working for this community as a catalyst for conversation and analysis on policy decisions that in fact impact balanced and responsible growth. If you're not a part of the Council, I hope you will be. I urge you to become a part of this great group and make that investment for the future of your business. Thank you again for being here tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the Reverend Dr. George B. Worth, Pastor Emeritus of the First Presbyterian Church of Atlanta.
I want to thank you, Larry, for inviting me to offer the invocation and blessing tonight, and for our friendship for all these years. I called your office this past week and tried to assure Heather Burdett that my opening prayer would be no longer than 15 to 20 minutes. She was absolutely silent for a few seconds, and then she started to laugh, and so did I. And in keeping with that spirit, this is a joyful and a happy occasion as we lift you up, Larry, and celebrate who you are, all that you have done and continue to accomplish, and just how much you mean to us, more than 1,000 people in this room and all across this city. Congratulations, and let us pray. Almighty God, we have come here tonight to honor you and to recognize one of your servant leaders, Larry Gellerstedt of Cousins Properties, and his wife Carol, his mother Mary, each member of his family, and those who served in Atlanta before him, including his father and grandfather, all of whom have been blessed with opportunities to envision and help to build a shining city set on a hill in this great state of Georgia. As we lift up the 4 pillars of leadership and success tonight, quality, responsibility, vision, and integrity, we thank you, Lord, for the gifts you have instilled in Larry, especially the gift of humility. For he believes what another leader of Atlanta said a generation ago: it's amazing what a man can do when he doesn't care who gets all the credit. We pray that same spirit will be true for all of the women and the men whom you have called to leadership in this city, and we hope that what we say and do will be pleasing in your sight and bring glory to your name. As we gather around these tables with a profound sense of gratitude, we thank you for the food we're about to enjoy, for those who have prepared it and will serve it, and we ask that we will be mindful of the needs of others and that you will inspire us to reach out to help them in whatever ways we can. These things we pray in your holy name. And all the people together said, amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 2019 4-Pillar Tribute Master of Ceremonies, President and CEO of the Metro Atlanta Chamber, Mrs. Hala Modelman.
Hello, everyone. Is everybody ready to talk about Larry for about 2 or 3 hours? Okay, I can't see Larry, which is probably a good thing, but welcome to this wonderful event. I hope you've enjoyed your table mates and spending some time together. We also want to just make sure that we urge everybody to know that we thank you for being here. So let's get this started. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say probably quite a few cliches tonight. But the good news about saying these cliches is that they're actually true when we're talking about Larry. So I am truly honored to be a part of this special event, and I can say that with complete sincerity. Larry has been a dear friend, and he is a genuine treasure for our business community. So, and as I think in his family, he is called Larry Gellerstedt III. And one thing I'm going to insert that I didn't think about till I was at the table is that Larry's grandfather and father and Larry have all 3 been chairs of the Metro Atlanta Chamber. And I believe they are the only triplets in the city. So I think that says a lot about Larry and his family. So the 4-Pillar Award recognizes philanthropic community activities as well as business developments and economic development and quality of life. And I really, again, another cliche, but I can't think of anyone who epitomizes these 4 pillars more than Larry. We know we're talking about quality, responsibility, vision, and integrity. So Larry was one of the first people that I met when I started at the Metro Atlanta Chamber, and he's become a close friend. He's been someone that I turn to for community advice, business advice, and book advice, but more on that later. And I really do want to say this to Larry. Larry, will you raise your hand? Because I don't know. Thank you. Okay, so I don't know if you realize this or not, but Larry is truly the only person in my career that I've ever called out as a true mentor. And I don't say that lightly, and I've just learned so much from simply watching Larry move in the world. So I just wanted to say that on a personal note. So moving on with the program, our first speaker is Russ Hardin. Russ, as you guys all know, is the president of the Robert W. Woodruff Foundation, and really it's one of the most generous foundations in our area, obviously, attributing more than $3 billion over the years to this very market. It shares office space, and Russ heads up the Joseph Whitehood Foundation, Letty Pate Foundation, and Letty Pate Evans Foundation. So Russ and Larry have been friends for a very long time. They've got a business relationship and a friendship, and that includes Larry's service on the Woodruff Foundation board and many other significant projects that they've worked on together. And as Russ puts it, he and Larry kind of came of age together in Atlanta. And I think Russ said he really couldn't remember a time without Larry in this market. So Russ was a young lawyer at King & Spalding, and Larry was a project manager at Beers. And Russ met Larry's father first, but he said he really just couldn't remember a time when, kind of Larry wasn't here and a key part of the Atlanta community. And while all of us agree that Larry is remarkably kind and a big heart and does a lot of wonderful things, as Russ said, Larry is happiest when he's actually taking actions to solve a problem and find a solution. So ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Russ Hardin.
Thank you, Hala, and thank you, Larry, for the privilege of participating tonight. My job is an easy one tonight. I'm here to talk about Larry with respect to our first pillar, quality. Larry and I have been friends for decades, as Hala said. We've worked together. I've known 4 generations of the Gellerstedt family, and Larry and I have played a lot of golf together over the years. I feel fortunate to have known Larry as a CEO, as a community leader, as a friend, and as a golfer. So tonight, I'm here to salute Larry, the man I know as a quality CEO, a quality community leader, a quality friend, and a very avid golfer. The council honors tonight another in a long line of civic-minded leaders who've helped build and nurture the Atlanta we enjoy today. An Atlanta that began impossibly as a railroad stop, that rose from the ashes after the Civil War, that held the audacious Piedmont Exposition in 1885, that built what would become the busiest airport in the world, that was ground zero for the American civil rights movement and earned the moniker, the city too busy to hate, that became home to the 3rd largest aggregation of Fortune 500 headquarters in the country, that hosted the Centennial Olympic Games, and that was once described as the fastest growing human settlement in the history of the world. We in this room largely inherited that Atlanta and benefit mightily today from all of the growth and prosperity that ensued. That Atlanta didn't happen by accident. The Council for Quality Growth brings us together to consider and to be intentional about what kind of Atlanta we in turn wish for our children and grandchildren. Larry and the great companies he has led, Beers Construction and Cousins Properties, have played a major role in that remarkable growth and development of Atlanta. In the construction industry, Beers was the gold standard of quality. In the commercial office market, Cousins is the gold standard. We honor Larry tonight, though, for much more than his business success. We honor him for his commitment, his sense of responsibility, and his impact on our community. Successful communities need leaders like Larry who care about the community, who engage deeply, and who assume the responsibility that comes along with the privilege of business success, influence, and leadership. Larry has served countless charitable organizations in Atlanta. He has chaired the board of most of those organizations. He has brought to those organizations Fernbank, Children's, the Y, the Woodruff Arts Center, the Chamber of Commerce, to name just a few, the very high standards of quality that earned him business success. In the process, he has been a model of civic engagement for all of us. Larry, we thank you tonight for your commitment to Atlanta and for the role that you have played and continue to play in our community. Atlanta is a better place because you have always called it home. We're grateful.
Thank you, Russ. Now on to our second pillar, Mr. Doug Hertz. Doug is President and CEO of United Distributors, which is the largest alcoholic beverage distribution in Georgia and Alabama, and he is one of Metro Atlanta's most respected leaders and believes that corporate success should fuel civic involvement. So I think you can tell that Doug and Larry already have a lot in common. So Doug continues to serve on multiple boards with Larry together, and they, as you probably know, have actually followed each other oftentimes as being chairs of the board, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, the Woodruff Arts Center, and many, many more. But their relationship goes back much, much further than that. They're both native Atlantans, which is something we love to celebrate in this town. And their families were friends many, many years ago. So back when their parents were friends, and now and they're friends, and their kids have been friends. And we really don't ever worry that this business of giving back to your community is going to die when people like Larry and Doug have the tradition of making sure that the next generation passes along their commitment to paying your, as Larry would say, your civic rent. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome for another tribute to responsibility, Mr. Doug Hertz.
Thank you, Hala, and Larry, thank you for giving me the opportunity this evening. No less a man than Winston Churchill once said, "The price one bears for greatness of achievement is responsibility." Thus, when speaking of Larry Gellerstedt, it's only appropriate that responsibility would be a characteristic or a pillar, as it may be, that helps define someone who has indeed achieved greatness in many ways. When one assumes responsibility, he or she enters into a covenant, an obligation to carry forward an assigned task to a successful conclusion. The two important requirements: one, the obligation, and two, a successful conclusion. Larry seems to take on one, and the second follows almost assuredly. Believe it or not, in my research for this, I came across another quote, a particularly interesting one, from Sigmund Freud. Now, I must admit, no one ever expected to hear Sigmund Freud and Larry Gellerstedt in the same sentence, particularly not Carol. But Freud said, given the choice, if people were to be honest with themselves, most do not really want total freedom, because total freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. Larry Gellerstedt is not one of those guys. He actually embraces the opportunity for responsibility. Additionally, in my research, the synonyms for responsibility that come up the most often are accountability, dependability, reliability, and trustworthiness. Larry certainly embodies all of these qualities, and there are lots of beneficiaries to Larry's willingness to shoulder responsibility. There's the fiduciary responsibility and leadership in the business world. There clearly is accountability there, where others are depending on you to be successful or depending upon you for their success. As Russ said, by all accounts in the world of commerce, Larry's done a marvelous job, highlighted by the bookends of his professional career. First at the family business, Spears Construction, and more recently as CEO of Cousins. So he's done it both at a private and a public enterprise. Those shareholders have done extremely well, and his associates that he's worked with have admired Larry for his leadership and the fact that they have enjoyed great opportunity for personal growth and advancement. And no one has taken civic responsibility more than Larry. And in most cases, I would tell you they were never easy gigs. To name just a few, a financial turnaround at Fernbank, the merger of Scottish Rite and Eggleston to form one of our greatest community assets in children's health care, the difficult governance changes that were necessary at the Woodruff Arts Center, the political machinations that are and have been necessary in leading the Georgia Research Alliance and the Atlanta Committee for Progress. Larry's never shied away from what we like to call paying our civic rent. In fact, Larry would be considered the model tenant of Atlanta. Nobody's assumed more community responsibility or paid more civic rent than Larry. Notwithstanding his incredible track record of responsibility in business and to our community, frankly, to me, the most impressive thing about Larry is his sense of responsibility to his family and to himself. I'd assert that in our American system of democracy that we're all free agents and therefore should be held responsible for the choices that we make and for the moral quality of our lives. The willingness to accept responsibility for one's own life circumstances is certainly the source from which self-respect springs. Personal responsibility means that sooner or later, the bill comes due for the choices that we make, for how we behave, for what we say, and how we live our lives. And we as individuals will have to pay them in currency one way or another. Larry says and does what he thinks is right. If it costs him a deal, so be it. If it costs him a friend, they weren't really his kind of guy anyway. If it keeps him from being a member of a club, a board, an organization, or an entity, it's a small price to pay, and he takes more pride in knowing that his principles were more important than his membership. Larry has the trait that I admire the most. He understands that in this world, what's ultimately the single most important truth is a responsibility that one has to oneself. So with regard to responsibility, whether it's business, community, or personal, Larry sets that gold standard. So on a personal note, some wise man once told me that if you hang out with chickens, you're probably going to cluck. But if you hang out with eagles, you're pretty likely to soar. That's why I like hanging out with Larry. Gives me a better chance to soar. Congratulations, my friend. Richly deserved.
Doug, thank you for that beautiful tribute, and well said there at the end. So Larry and his family, I think we all know, have been patrons of the arts for decades. So we're going to have another musical interlude, and it's going to be again by the Atlanta Music Senior Youth Choir for this special musical tribute to Larry. So please join me in welcoming the choir.
Gal maid has got a shade on sweet Georgia brown. 2 left feet, but also neat is sweet Georgia brown. They all sigh and wanna die for sweet Georgia brown. I'll tell you just why. You know I don't lie, no, not much. It's been said she knocks 'em dead when she lands in town. Since she came, why, it's a shame how she cools 'em down. Feathers can get are fellas that she ain't met. Georgia claimed her, Georgia named her sweet Georgia, sweet baby Georgia, sweet Georgia Brown.
Wow, let's give it up one more time for the soloist on that. It was incredible. And I gotta tell you, I know I'm gonna say this out loud because it's a friend of Larry's, but she and Cooper, you have some competition coming now on her singing. So anyway, a wonderful, wonderful tribute to Larry, and I know he loves that last song, so thank you. Next up, we have Donna Hyland, and Donna is the president and CEO of Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And under her leadership, some really incredible things have happened. The CHOA, as we all know it, has consistently been ranked in U.S. News and World Report as one of the top pediatric hospitals in the country. And this one blows me away. For 14 years in a row, Fortune magazine has named CHOA as one of the best places to work, and that's no small feat. So Donna, hats off to you. And I absolutely love Donna's story about when she first met Larry. It was back in 1998, and it was when this merger thing was going on. So she was going to go visit, she was the CFO at the time of Scottish Rite, I think, and she was going to go down to visit Larry in his downtown office at Beers Construction. And this is way before Google Maps and all that. So she goes down and she's circling around the block, looking for this, big construction, office tower. And so Beers was in this little small house. So she finally found it. And like many of us, she'd heard so much about Larry, she was expecting, this larger-than-life character, but instead, what she met is the man that we all know, down-to-earth, humble, and helpful. So from that first encounter forward, Donna worked with Larry on the front lines of the merger between Eggleston and Scottish Rite. And Larry, as usual, put the community, and especially our children in the community, before his own business or personal interests, and navigated what was a difficult situation at the time. And this vision is what created Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. So with her own respected reputation for making sound financial decisions and working with many notable charitable organizations, Donna certainly understands the importance of visions. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome to the stage Donna Hyland.
Thank you, Hala. And it's such an honor to be here tonight for me to speak about Larry and especially about the attribute of vision. I've had the opportunity to know Larry in several ways, but to experience his leadership and vision, both as a member of the Cousins Properties Board, where he led a very impressive turnaround and resurgence of this great company, as well as his role at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And tonight, that's what I'm really going to focus on, is to tell you the story of Children's. There would not be a Children's Healthcare of Atlanta if it weren't for Larry Gellerstedt's leadership. Today, Children's is one of the leading pediatric healthcare systems in the country. We're nationally ranked in numerous programs. Our research partnership with Emory University is one of the top 4 in the country. We treat over 1 million patient visits a year from all 159 counties in Georgia and 43 states. Because of Larry, Atlanta and Georgia can boast this top-rated system of health care for children. Lives are saved every day. In Atlanta, we have something very special that many other cities in America don't have, a healthcare system solely dedicated to kids. In 1998, there were these 2 warring children's hospitals, Eggleston and Scottish Rite, and I do mean warring. Larry was on the Eggleston board, and he was also very trusted and well respected by the Scottish Rite board. He was watching what was going on with this war and recognizing the challenges that were coming for children's hospitals. So he brokered discussions between the 2 boards to see if there was common ground for the good of children and families in this community. I'm told that within a relatively short period of time, the 2 groups were able to agree on really 3 guiding principles: that sick and injured children belong in a children's hospital because of, with their resources and specialization, that's where they get the best outcomes, that these 2 institutions were owned by the community, and that as the fiduciaries, it was their responsibility to ensure this precious asset for future generations. With that shared understanding, a merger was launched. I was the CFO at Scottish Rite and the CFO at Eggleston. We were both tagged to work with this special committee that was led by Larry. We had to complete the due diligence and execute the merger agreement. The next several months were very challenging. Larry, don't worry, I'm not going to tell all the secrets because it'll spoil your book. There were people that wanted the merger to occur, and there were people who didn't. During that period, I had the privilege of watching Larry masterfully deal with these numerous factions and challenges. He remained steadfast, calm, and deliberate. He had arrows firing from all directions, but his commitment did not weaken. He had a vision for what could be. I'm not sure that even Larry could imagine what Children's has become. Larry's a born leader and a visionary, and he was blessed with parents who prepared him to be the superstar leader that he is. His mom, Mrs. Gellerstedt, is here tonight, and she too is a strong leader. She was a pioneer for women, and she's an inspiration not only to Larry and his family, but to many of us. Larry, your vision has saved countless lives, cured children's hearts, answered the prayers of worried parents and grandparents, and importantly, enabled thousands of children to grow up. As the head of our cancer center says, every child deserves a lifetime. The world needs visionaries now more than ever. Those people who see something that can be better than anyone else can imagine. Those people who not only dream it, but make it happen. So Larry, we want to thank you on behalf of Atlanta and for all of us for always looking ahead and helping all of us be the very best that we could be. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Next we have Mr. Egbert Perry, Chairman and CEO of the Integral Group. And Egbert's company is really much more than just a real estate group. It's actually one of the largest African-American owned businesses in the U.S. and was founded in 1993. And I will tell you, I was very impressed when I spoke with Egbert, and he remembered the exact date that he met Larry, and that was January 7th, 1980. And since that first meeting, the two men have worked on some of Atlanta's most recognizable projects, and I think they've been up here tonight, but the Georgia Dome, the 191 Peachtree Tower, the Carter Presidential Library, and the Atlanta University Center's Woodruff Library. And as Larry's father once told Egbert, you know you're getting old when they start tearing down the buildings that you built. And then you fast forward a few years, and Larry and Egbert get to watch the Georgia Dome implode. So it's just still happening. And these two also worked side by side when Larry was a partner at Integral. And so I think that Egbert is truly one who understands Larry's work ethic and can definitely attest to his integrity. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Egbert Perry to the stage.
Thank you, Hala. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. Wow. It's not awake. No, I really want to, first of all, applaud the Council for Quality Growth for picking an outstanding individual. Hala said earlier, sometimes you make remarks about people. This one happens to be very true. That implies that sometimes she's not really being honest, but I'm going to leave that alone. Good judgment in selecting Larry. I will tell you, though, the person who hates being here, getting attention more than anybody else in this room is Larry. He is truly a humble guy, and it is true I've known Larry since around 9 o'clock on January 7th, 1980. And after all you've heard tonight, you probably think of him as Mr. Gellerstedt. Well, I want to change that for you in a minute. I joined a company, H.J. Russell & Company, and I started work that day. And I went over to meet a partner. We're going to build the Robert Woodruff Library at the Atlanta University Center. And so Herman Russell and I went over, and we were sitting down in the lobby waiting to meet with Lawrence, Larry's father. And then H.J. tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Oh, stand up, let's go. I want you to meet this guy. This is little Larry. So you all have permission to call him little Larry. None of this Mr. Gellerstedt stuff." And Hala is right. We went on to build a lot of buildings over the years, had a great time, built a tremendous friendship. And in the early 2000s, Larry and I were partners at Integral. And the point is, I know Larry. I've known him as a close friend, a very close friend, a business partner, an advisor, a mentor, a confidant. And we talk about a lot of things, many things that are private as well as in the professional and civic realm. But his business success since those days back in the early 80s has been nothing short of phenomenal. Somebody said it earlier, he made beers into the gold standard, the standard bearer for the construction industry. And a lot of contractors sighed relief when Larry decided to change professions because it opened the door for other contractors who didn't have a chance while he was there. His civic leadership, similar story, very impressive. You heard many of the stories here, and what you always realize with Larry is Larry's a name that comes to people's minds when they're thinking about difficult but important things. He takes them on, he works hard, he shows up. Now, I'm supposed to talk about integrity, and I can say that throughout all of those business and civic accomplishments, Larry has actually always shown up and brought tremendous integrity to every one of those endeavors. His word is gold, and he lives up to his commitments and his obligations. And unlike a lot of people, he's really just a nice, decent guy with a big heart. None of that success has ever gotten to his head. Yet, I will tell you, to some people, Larry isn't special at all. But the only people that have the right to say that are his parents. Because Larry is simply doing what his wonderful parents, Lawrence and Mary, raised him to do. He is a servant leader. He is given back the way they did. And quite frankly, He's just doing what they expected of him. But to the rest of us, and all of you in this room, we know Larry's special. He's very special. And deep down, I think his parents know that he is, in fact, exceeding even their expectations. So, we stay impressed with his intellect, his leadership. His integrity is best demonstrated by the community sentiment as expressed tonight and what reverberates across the city in both boardrooms and civic rooms. So, last of all, he's a really, really smart guy. And he married up when he found Carol. Maybe Carol found him and wanted a project. So Larry, as your very dear friend, I want you to know that no matter what lens you look through, you are tremendous credit to your race. Thank you.
Okay, that was great, Egbert. Really beautiful, and I did love that last thing. And I have to say, so many people during the cocktail hour and all the presenters tonight, we said, we know Larry hates this, and then we said, and that's why it's so much fun. So anyway, we're going to stop this torture and praise in just a minute, but I do have a couple of comments that I wanted to mention as well about Larry, and I was truly honored when he asked me to be the MC. I want to make sure you guys know that it was Larry that asked me to come up here. But seriously, as I've gotten to know Larry, we know that he is a serious history buff. He majored in history, and his special time of history that I think he studies the most is between the two world wars. And, you know, that was a time when there was a lot of hatred and prejudice in the world, and things were brewing that were not good. And a lot of you in this room were at this event, and many people have mentioned it to me tonight, as a matter of fact. But when Larry gave his acceptance speech for the National Human Relations Award from the American Jewish Committee in 2017, Larry reminded us to pay attention to the kind of behavior that we see that's negative, some of the hatred and prejudice, because it's often driven by people who've lost hope or feel disaffected. And he also said that we have to have the courage to call out things that aren't really comfortable to call out in our daily lives. And that's one of the things that I truly admire about Larry. He is someone who always strives to be on the right side of history, pushing for non-Christians to work at Westminster schools over 25 years ago, or helping us at the Metro Chamber and the business community to try to battle discriminatory legislation over the last few years. Larry lives with courage and strength every day, both in his professional dealings and in his personal life. And it is truly, again, a cliche, but my honor to be a part of this special night of recognition. So before we bring Larry up, we've got one more tribute, and it is a video where many of you in the audience have had a chance to speak to Larry directly. And so let's take a minute to watch Strength Through Diversity video tribute to Larry.
It was once said that a person with the knowledge of history is like a tree with spectacular roots. There couldn't be a more appropriate sentiment when talking about Larry Gellerstedt, a forever student of history and deep-rooted in the foundation of Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta has long been known as the city too busy to hate.
Those who love Atlanta speak of its boundless energy, its continuing prosperity, its embrace of diversity, and its array of talents. Funny, it doesn't go unnoticed that all the same can be said for Larry. A standout leader who figures the only thing better than learning from history is to be an integral part of it. And that's just what he's done. A native of Atlanta, Georgia, Larry Gellerstedt III is the son of Lawrence and Mary Gellerstedt, an eminent family in the development of Atlanta. Larry's also the little brother to two sisters, Gail and Ellen. Early on in Larry's life, the importance of community and family was instilled in him.
His father had great leadership skills. His father wanted to be involved. His father was a leader in believing in diversity early on. So a lot of what you see in Larry today, it came from his father, and mother also contributed to the wonderful person that Larry is.
Larry's been developing Atlanta out of his playpen, I think, following his father around to sites on some of the great buildings in Atlanta.
After graduating from Westminster in Atlanta, Larry continued his education at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. It's here that Larry found many of his great passions, studying history, earning his bachelor's degree, along with a second in psychology, and his lifelong love, a beautiful partner to share the future with, his wife, Carol.
Larry and Carol and I were all together in a PE soccer class at UNC, and that's how I sort of tried to get Carol interested first, but totally whiffed, and so Larry moved in for the kill.
What happened after we met in soccer class? We were just friends. We went off for the summer. I wore sweatpants generally in the soccer class, and so in the fall I returned and I joined a sorority. And the sorority pledges served beer at the Chi Psi fraternity where Larry was a member. He saw me there the first time in a skirt, and he actually showed a lot more interest, and we started dating, and that was the beginning and the end.
I had the good fortune to attend their wedding the day after graduation from Chapel Hill. Carol has been just a rock for Larry for over 40 years, and they have a wonderful relationship.
So our life after college, we stayed at Chapel Hill for the summer so that I could take some more of my English courses, and then we moved to Atlanta.
What makes a great city? Well, having a famous street known the world over helps.
So we settled into an apartment for a year and then moved to a home. And I worked for 3 or 4 years before we started having children, and then we had Lawrence and Liza.
If I had to go through life lessons from my dad, the list would be very, very long. Probably top of that list is patience. He's taught me that regardless of what life throws at you, you have to be patient, be humble, be kind to those around you, and that if you do that, you can get through just about anything.
My dad is always the person that you would go to in a situation where you need someone to listen with a calm mind and give you a 1,000-foot view.
The pulse of a great city can be measured only by how high you can go.
Larry began his career at Beers, where he was tasked with overseeing the construction of some of the most iconic buildings in Atlanta.
Well, Atlanta has its share of original architecture on a grand scale.
When you think about the development of Atlanta, what it looks like today and what it looked like 25 years ago, you can see Larry Gellerstedt's fingerprints all over it.
Well, I think as you look around the skyline, you're going to know that Larry Gellerstedt has been in the Atlanta market, but I think of it a lot more around just pure economic development.
Larry's talents couldn't be contained for just one career path and company.
Great things are certainly happening today, but to help provide a sneak peek
After navigating the sale of Beers, Larry became the chairman and CEO of manufacturer American Business Products, and later COO of the Integral Group and CEO of the Gellerstedt Group. These would lead Larry to join one of Atlanta's most respected companies, Cousins Properties, becoming chairman and CEO, a perfect choice for the company during a tumultuous economic period.
It's housing that led us into this economic crisis. It's got to be housing that takes us out.
It was 2009. Clearly the real estate market was struggling, and most souls would have run in the other direction. Taking on that leadership role was going to be an enormous challenge, and Larry didn't think twice.
The company found itself over-levered and in tough financial straits. I don't know that the general public realizes that as much, but Larry set about orchestrating truly one of the most remarkable real estate turnarounds that has been seen in quite some time.
and Larry was absolutely the right person to bring back integrity, to bring back strategy, to bring back commitment to the shareholders that were so important to the success of Cousins Properties under his leadership.
Larry is about excellence, and so he represented the company, Cousins Property, in that way. Probably equally important, however, is how he thought about and how he led the employees there. He cared about that team, and he was very careful to ensure that as he was giving back, Cousins Property was giving back. As he was driving change, they were right there with him, beside him, helping and serving in the community.
During this time and continuing today, Larry has a dedication and responsibility to give back to the city he loves so much.
I have never been in a meeting. You're generating the list for who do we need to bring on board to help us move this project forward? Who do we need to bring on board to help us raise money? Who do we need to bring on board to help us solve the problem? And the first person at the top of everyone's list is Larry Gellerstedt.
Here in Atlanta, certainly his involvement with Woodruff Arts Foundation, his involvement with Children's Healthcare.
Larry said, why should there be two children's hospitals in Atlanta? Eggleston and Scottish Rite, who were competitors, and I think he stepped back and said, let's think about the children and the health care of the children, and let's merge these two. Not an easy thing to do, but I think with his brand of leadership, things like that can be accomplished.
With this type of life accomplishment, it's easy to wonder, what is there left to do? For Larry, the answer is simple. Be with the ones that are the lifeblood of all of your achievements.
Family's always been sort of at the center of things, or right in the middle of things. The way that he walks the line between being a leader and being a father or being a grandfather, finding that balance and integrating those roles, all of them, and holding them all dear, even when it's difficult. What are some of your favorite things to do with him?
Play in the pool with him.
He's always believed in us, given us that core love, and I'm sure that's what he'll keep doing in the future.
I was going into the family totally blind, and instead of meeting Larry Gellerstedt, III, I just met Larry, and he was just Lawrence's dad. And he was kind like a dad, he was silly like a dad, and he made me feel like I was with my own dad.
I love the times that we share together, the best times at the lake, and I think it's just cool to have a granddad like that.
To be here together to share in our family and the future of our community, Atlanta and Georgia, and I just feel extremely lucky.
So I think I speak for all of Atlanta when I simply say, thank you for having the quality, responsibility, vision, and integrity to give so much of your heart and soul to this great city. You are Atlanta, Georgia.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Council for Quality Growth's 2019 Four-Pillar Tribute honoree, Mr. Larry Gellerstedt III.
Larry, it's been a wonderful evening. The Council for Quality Growth could not be more pleased to have this opportunity to pay tribute to you, your accomplishments, and your contribution to our community. It is my personal pleasure, on behalf of the Council, to present you with the 2019 Four-Pillar Award. This award is inscribed with the words quality, responsibility, vision, and integrity. In tribute to Larry Gellerstedt III from the Council for Quality Growth, the 2019 4-Pillar Award. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. I feel like I have to try to introduce the real Larry Gellerstedt, because a lot of you all that know me for a long time, I bet we're sitting there going, well, that ain't exactly. He's not exactly. My son, Lawrence, leaned over during the middle of the thing and he said, "You are fundamentally a flawed person." And my response to him is, absolutely, I am. But in seriousness, and trust me, people don't need to worry about a long speech, and the people from Cousins know that I usually bring a speech with me and I rarely ever look at it. I can't multitask and speak and read at the same time very well. But in all seriousness, there are just a couple things I'd really like to say. The first two probably being the most important. And that is the two emotions that I have tonight are gratitude and humility. If you think about the word gratitude, think about a guy like me growing up in a city like this, in a business like real estate and construction in Atlanta, Georgia, in a family like I was blessed to grow up in. And I just have a lot of gratitude. I also really appreciate and have gratitude for the Council for Quality Growth. Those are my peers. And I think in a competitive industry over the years, there's no greater compliment than being recognized by your peers. And the council does terrific work, as Russ said, on trying to make sure the community 20 and 30 years out is a wonderful community like we've been able to enjoy. Perhaps most importantly tonight is I feel a lot of gratitude. My business career, can you imagine bookends like Beers Construction and Cousins Properties? I mean, that's a real gift. And Cousins, I gave up the CEO title the end of the year, and I really would like to call out Colin Conley, who has taken the CEO role, and the Cousins team, and have them stand up tonight, and if you would recognize them. I can't tell if you're standing up, but I really hope you will. You know, the greatest thing about transitions, and not everything is easy on transitions, trust me, Colin knows, is that when you really in your heart, you know you've got a team that's going to take the company forward in a way you could never imagine and do it the right way. And Cousins' best times are yet to come. And then the civic thing, gosh, all the organizations whose missions I've gotten to be a part of, thank you. It's been an honor. So gratitude is number one. But the second one, which gets into the theme of my speech, is humility. And listen, you don't get to do what I've got to do without having an ego. And, you know, humility is something I think that I learned from my parents from an early day. It's something that you constantly aspire to. But really, when I was thinking, as I was thinking about this talk, when you think about the things that were listed that I've gotten to be a part of, and this is something my dear friend Egbert and he's heard me say 100 times, but if life is a 100-yard race, or your business career is a 100-yard race, I got to start on the 20-yard line. I did. I mean, think about it. Atlanta, real estate and construction, terrific family, terrific education, Unfortunately, being white and male was a huge advantage. But the people in this room that I know, many of you, the races y'all have run are much more impressive than mine. And I admire you for that. But the reason I picked the topic I did really goes back to that, is let's think about our country all along, including today. Our country is a very, very diverse country and has been from the day that all of our families, whenever that was and wherever they came from, came over to this continent. If we had defined ourselves by what our differences are in a negative way, this experiment never could have worked. I read history. If you read about the founding fathers, they couldn't stand each other, didn't like each other. Their work actually came out of months during a hot summer of exhausting work. I think what they came up with was just, let's get the hell out of town, and it was pretty damn good. But no one in the room got 100% of what they wanted. I think that's what we really have to inspire ourselves, and let me make that on a personal basis. And before I talk about this, I want to note, if anything I say tonight implies that I don't have prejudice, that's not the truth. All of us have prejudices. It's just human nature. But with all the privileges I grew up with, the greatest gift that my father gave me, it's been a little emotional today. I don't know why, but I always miss him. But man, today I really miss him. His dad had a thing of making sure that all of our family, my sisters and I, knew that every human being puts on their pants the same way every morning, and none of us are born any better than our fellow citizens. How did he play that out with me? Well, as my friends know that have known me a long time, while a lot of my friends that I grew up with during the summers got to go to camps, long vacations with family, thank goodness my dad made me work. I rode delivery trucks from when I was 8 years old. I started working in the field as a concrete laborer when I was 14. I did that on the same labor crew all the way through college. And besides the value of hard work, which that certainly showed me, think of the imprint it made, that when you're out there in a hot day slinging concrete and you finally get a break, the fact that everybody in the crew isn't of your race or background, you realize that we're all people and we share so much in common. We were all hustling for a paycheck so we could support our families. And that really, I think, was one of the greatest gifts that my parents gave me. So let's back away from that and think about Atlanta and where we're privileged to be here tonight. When civil rights movement really got going, Atlanta was smaller than every one of our competitive cities we think of today in the Southeast: Birmingham, Nashville, Memphis, Charlotte. Something different happened in Atlanta in the 1960s, which we're all getting dividends from to this day. There were a group of black and white leaders that got together every Saturday morning called the Action Forum. My dad was part of that. They didn't agree with each other. But going into civil rights, because of circumstances in Atlanta, they knew each other personally. And in those closed-door meetings, they would probably spend, I wasn't in the room, but they probably spent 80% of their time telling each other how much they disagreed with each other. But they found this common sliver, which was they didn't want violence in our community, for all its citizens. And they worked every single week. And think about Atlanta. Atlanta got through that period of time without the race riots that our peer cities have. Today, we pride ourselves that we're the home of the civil rights movement, as we should. But listen, if you think about the time that was done, was it popular? Heck no, particularly with the white community. Anytime your power and prestige has to be shared, it's hard. That's human nature. But gosh, do you think we would have had the Olympics if we weren't had that shared history and background? Do you think this city would have thrived? No. And so really what, I think is the opportunity for all of us in this room, myself included, is to think about how people in this room a bunch of years from now will think about us. We certainly are in a period of our country. Democracy depends upon compromise and respect. Usually it's the last resort if you look at democracy. We usually try everything else before we get the right thing. But there have been other periods in history where leadership, and I'm not talking about any specifics, person or thing. It's hard to talk about this today because we're so divided that people don't say, is he doing this or is he doing that? But our demographics show if we don't respect and compromise and learn from each other, this thing won't keep working. And where better to show it than in Atlanta, Georgia? But we can't just ride and assume that it's here because it's hard, it's changing, it's not popular, and it doesn't just happen. Listen, diversity and appreciation of diversity doesn't come to you because it requires you to get out of your comfort zone, at least mentally. So let me wrap up, promise I'm wrapping up, with two examples that have blessed me because I think diversity is also a huge competitive advantage. Leads to better decisions, no doubt about that. But as Egbert said, we met very early in our career. Egbert and I wouldn't have met if there wasn't a very unpopular program called affirmative action requirements. That was one of the compromises that came out of the Action Forum. Certainly wasn't in favor with people at that time that looked like me. But it was done. Otherwise, we wouldn't have met. We also got to be pals. Here's a guy from Antigua. His parents were chicken farmers. That I don't have a better friend in the world, but we wouldn't have met. Then they showed the 191 Peachtree building. I really wanted to build that project, really. And folks that know me, I can be a bit competitive. We weren't big enough. Our company wasn't big enough to do it. There was no affirmative action requirement. I didn't know any other contractor very well because we spent time trying to beat each other up. Called my pal Egbert. I said, you want to do this together? He said, sure, let's do it. It's funny, a couple of weeks later, when word got out, one of the people representing the ownership of that project, long before we'd secured the bid, called and said, we really don't like you bringing race into the equation. The selection. I said, I didn't realize I did. I just reached out to my only pal in the construction business, and Holder joined us in that effort. We got to build that building. I think I benefited pretty well personally from that friendship. That group of people went on to build the Georgia Dome, Phillips Arena, all sorts of things. Pretty special thing. So then, in 2000, I was running American Business Products. I had to step down from that job for medical reasons. You know what the medical reasons were? I had anxiety and depression. I had to be hospitalized for that twice. My family, unbelievable, and gosh, the scars that put on them. But when I got out, I realized that I'd almost died because I had a prejudice about mental illness. And that was stupid, because I started on the 20-yard line, I'd had resources that I just asked, but I thought it was a sign of character weakness. And I decided that I'd been blessed at that point in life, but I was going to say something about it. You know, Maria Supporter and I met and talked about that I wanted to do this. I wanted to talk about what I had. I wanted to talk about the poor decisions I made, and hopefully, it wasn't any gift of sacrifice. It was just hoping that one person out there, it might help them not make a dumb decision that I had almost made on a Saturday morning. Maria knows, editors at the paper, family, everybody, you know, appropriately were saying, I'm not sure this is smart for you to do. I don't think you ought to do it. Make sure you're well enough to do it. But the one I remember most, and I don't know if Maria's here tonight, but is one person looked at me and said, you know, if you want to do it, go ahead, but it will cost you your business career. Because no one's ever going to hire anybody for a leadership position knowing that I wouldn't have, for God's sakes, before I went through it. I'd like to think I would have, but I don't think I would have. So I'm teaching school. That's what I did. Taught school and coached baseball. And who called me and offered me a chance to go to work with him and go back in the business world? A black guy from Antigua named Egbert Perry. You know, if we just commit ourselves to defining and making efforts to get to know people different than us on an individual basis, it's amazing how prejudice goes away. And I really, really worry about that in the world, in our country today. But I also am equally optimistic and positive that this community, Atlanta, the region, can fight with those issues, be honest about those issues, but with joy tackle those issues and maybe be a beacon of light as we go forward. The national stuff, the international stuff's important, but it's hard to really say, how do I lock in? We all know in this room we can lock in, and I'm confident we will do so, and you inspire me that will make it happen. This is an incredible honor. Mike, Ann, friends, and I can't tell you how much it means to me that you all would come and be here tonight, and thank you. We're done.
Larry, thank you for that wonderful message, for sharing that with us, and thank you for everything you have done for this city and for all of us in this city. And we are so proud to be able to honor you this way tonight. Thank you to our speakers. You guys did a great job. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to everyone who is here tonight to honor Larry. Have a great rest of the night. We got out early. And be safe driving home. Thank you again.